Hello! Today we're going to be talking about some of the most influential sneakers over the past decade. And what a decade it has been. Sneaker culture has gone from being something very fringy, almost cringy, very nichey, very undergroundy, to something that is very mainstream, very ubiquitous, and very commonplace. And there have been a few sneakers, models, and designers that have really catalyzed this transition. And in today's episode, we are going to talk about it. Do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you like this type of sneaker content, feel free to subscribe. Now, it would be remiss of me not to briefly mention a couple of sneakers that sort of predate this decade that I am referencing. In 2011, for example, we had the retro of the Concord 11s, which brought pandemonium and mainstream media attention to sneakerheads camping out to get their hands on these very coveted sneakers. The following year, we had something very similar with the Galaxy Foamposites. And we also had the Roshe Runs, which would inspire a big sneaker that's going to feature on today's list, as well as the Nike Flyknit Racer, whose technology would really inspire an entire wave of new sneakers. I want to start the list off by talking about the 2014 Nike Air Yeezy 2 Red Octobers. One of the holy of holy grails for most sneaker collectors out there. This was, of course, the last Nike Air Yeezy ever. By the time it had released, Kanye had already severed ties with Nike, and it's really the way that these released that was very influential. You see, these could almost be called the very first shock drop. The link to buy these appeared on Twitter out of nowhere, and unless you were hip to Nike's Twitter or present on the forums, you never would have known these ever dropped. These were so sought after that in the wake of the release, people were actually selling receipts of the shoes, never mind the shoes. These had a huge influence on resale culture. Given the limited availability of the sneaker and the incredibly high demand, this was a sneaker that was fetching crazy money even very early in its existence. Nowadays, you can see pairs of these going north of 20 grand. Next up from 2014, we have these, the Air Jordan 1 High Fragment collab. Now, at the time of the release, streetwear was becoming really popular. The combination of designer stuff and streetwear stuff and sneakers was starting to take form. And these were almost the perfect embodiment of this reticulation. The whole idea of Jordans being completely upscaled with quality of materials, attachment to a cult streetwear brand, very much added to the cool and the allure. And because they were produced in such limited numbers, people went crazy for these. This sneaker is arguably the sneaker that really ushered in an entire epoch of high-end Jordan 1 collaborations. Next up, in 2015, we have the Adidas Ultra Boost. If you guys were around in the sneaker game in 2015, you'll know that Adidas and the Ultra Boost had the game in an absolute headlock. Boost technology had pretty much taken over. Kanye, who was pretty much the most influential guy in fashion at the time, was wearing these with jeans. The PrimeKnit, which you've got to say was heavily influenced by Nike's Flyknit technology, was absolutely pumping. And people were just digging the idea of wearing something really comfortable whilst simultaneously looking really trendy. And then you had the collabs. Shoes like the Woodwoods, Soulbox, the Hype Beasts. The Ultra Boosts would come to represent almost the zenith or the apex of the Hypebeast era. Now, as you can imagine, we are going to stay on Adidas for a minute because, like I said, man, they had the game locked up. When the NMD came out, this was a hugely popular sneaker with pretty much everybody. The OG versions in the all black colorway and the all white colorway were going for crazy money at one point. And then when they decided to branch out and do collabs with the likes of Pharrell Williams, people just went nuts. These shoes were fetching enormous money on the resale market, and with social media coming along and resale platforms like StockX coming up, demand was at a high. Now, quite possibly the biggest success story of Adidas and Boost during this 2015, 2016, 2017 period has got to be Yeezy with the 350s and the 750s. Now, Ye admittedly drew inspiration from the Roshe Run, which I mentioned earlier. The demand for the first set of 350s was off the charts. The resale prices were crazy. The 750s felt like a little bit of an elevation in terms of not just the height of the shoe, but also the appeal of the shoe as you moved into a slightly more high fashion aesthetic. Designer jeans, t-shirts, Yeezys, streetwear caps. This was the look and the feel at the time. And this era would go on to heavily influence not just sneaker fashion, but mainstream fashion for a number of years to come. Next up, we have the 2000 2017 Air Jordan 1 Chicago Off-White, one of the most influential sneakers on this entire list. You see, it brought the hype back to Nike. This shoe, alongside the entire 10 collection, was genius. Deconstructing and reimagining and putting a postmodern twist on a sneaker was the breath of fresh air that sneaker culture needed, and Virgil delivered big time. His influence can still be felt to this very day, and the prices that these sneakers continue to go for to this day are a testament to its success and timelessness. He inspired the sense of individualization and customization through the added laces and the cable ties. He essentially wants you to take the extras from the Off-White collabs and then play around with your other shoes to completely change up the look of your sneakers if you wanted to. So not only did Virgil inspire a whole slew of new design ideas, not only did he help to repopularize the Jordan 1, but he also inspired an entire generation of sneaker customizers to think a little bit differently about how they approached customizing Nikes and Jordans. Next up, it's the Jordan 1 Travis Scott High from 2019. It's going to be pretty hard to talk about the most influential sneakers of the past decade without mentioning Travis Scott. By wearing Nike SB Dunks, he pretty much revived an entire subsection of sneaker culture. And you can see that as a good thing or a bad thing, to be fair. But when this shoe dropped in 2019, it really helped to continue to propel the popularity of the Jordan 1, and his influence definitely brought a lot more young people into the sneaker game. After all, they wanted to dress like him, they wanted to look like him, they wanted to be him, and because he was seen showing out in his concerts wearing these, the demand for them was crazy, the resale prices were nuts, and this color scheme, the mocha, would go on to influence a lot of different color blockings and color palettes that designers and companies and brands would use over the ensuing years. I mean, think about how popular mocha colored shoes have become in recent years. A lot of that going back to this shoe. Coming out of 2019 into 2020, we're into the current era, I want to call it, the pandemic, post-pandemic sneaker culture. And as much as it pains me to reference this sneaker, or these sneakers rather, or one of them's not, I mean, they're not actually even really sneakers. You can't deny their influence has been enormous. And that is the Yeezy foam runners and the Yeezy slides. During the pandemic, everybody was home. The only thing that we were allowed to do was to go outside and exercise, which meant that for most of us, we were at home in slides or comfy kinds of footwear most of the time. And so people were basically living in these foam runners, living in these slides. And because of the somewhat novel design and just how different they were and how affordable they were if you managed to get a pair for retail, it was the ultimate democratization of footwear because the main focus of them was being comfortable and being cozy. I mean, it literally became drip to wear foam runners with anything. And now the influence of the foam runner can be seen on a daily basis. How many companies are you seeing making foam slides or foam type runners or clogs or mules or 3D printed sneakers with the same kind of aesthetic? Like, the Yeezy foam runner is almost the eponymous ancestor of an entire generation of footwear. The New Balance 2002 are Rain Cloud from the protection pack. Now, I'm not trying to say this is the dad shoe that put everybody onto the dad shoes. You could walk back to the Yeezy 700, the Wave Runners. You could go back to the Monarchs. You could even reference the Balenciaga Triple S as helping to popularize this chunky dad shoe trend. But I want to point to the 2002 New Balance as being the specific model that really put people on to New Balance and has made New Balance pretty much a mainstay in the current sneaker culture epoch. I mean, this sneaker single-handedly brought a lot of people into the brand, and once people discovered how comfortable they are, how wearable they are, and how on trends they are, it's kept people coming back to New Balance, and it's kept them relevant to this very day. Now, you're probably sat there thinking, my man has missed a whole bunch of influential sneakers, and to be fair, I probably have. These are just some of the big ones that come up when I think about what sneakers over the past 10 years have really shifted the needle in terms of trends or sneaker design or attitudes and perceptions towards sneakers and footwear. And so feel free to jump into the comments and let me know which sneakers you think have been the most influential over the past 10 years, and I'll be happy to add them to a part 2 potentially. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please give the video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys on the next video. Take care for now, and peace.